the stars dimmed like coals beneath a funeral cloth. Wrecks swung above deserts that remembered voices. 2 moons turned in their black cradles and shed frost as if shedding memory. Orbital husks drew cathedral shadows across cities flensed to rib and spire. Wind moved through galleries of bone and rang teeth into thin chimes. In the noosphere a toll began, patient as winter, exact as a surgeon's metronome. We truly love and care for you. Before we begin the story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? And what time is it there? Now let's get started. They brought me numbers before faces. The survivor flotilla limped through Meridian Gate with hulls stitched by spines and drives coughing star ash. Its captains speaking in math, because language had already been gnawed to gristle. 9 moons gone to parchment. 14 worlds scraped clean to the ivory of crust. 1,000 names whittled to initials, then to a vowel that sounded like breath leaving. Under those broken keels drifted reliquaries of paper, prayers in inks that once oceaned and now only ran. My court assembled beneath the quartz nave that remembered rain. Virus arrived first, cryptek of null geometries, hooded in angles that drank light. His smile was a craftsman's, patient, certain everything important can be filed to fit. Farseer Erinda crossed the threshold as if stepping through a memory that did not want her back, runes hitching in her hands like fish desperate for deeper water. Magos Helion clanked in with his human adepts, incense barely masking solvent, augmenters hissing like tamed serpents. Marshal Kyle came last, armor buffed thin by too much service, the ledger of the living and the gone strapped to his wrist like a confession. The toll went on, a cold bell counting a corridor of years. You have heard it, I said. You know what it summons. An old lattice, my king, Virus answered, inclining his head toward the sleeping pylons along Ossa Primus. Wake it, and we can abrade the shadow where it is thickest. There will be costs. Costs. Hillion's vox clicked, amused and afraid. Thread human noosphere through your relay. Let my choir sing in your halls. Harmonics that bruise synapse, perhaps even scatter it. The graft will be inelegant, brief and effective. It will poison the sky, Erinda said, voice ironed thin. She let her runes fall. They skittered into a pattern like drowned constellations. Every chorus has ghosts. If you sow this, you blind those who guide by listening. Kyle did not speak until I looked at him. Say plain if you mean to feed us to your monuments, he said. I will hold the line either way. Lines are for holding. Duty is a door. I once promised to hold it closed. The promise was born in rain, on a copper balcony above an ordinary street with ordinary lamps. A mortal lover traced a garden on wet stone and asked me to imagine seasons instead of centuries. When biotransference came and the triarchy sloughed its flesh like a festival mask, I carried that balcony into the long night like a coin I would not spend. Never wake to conquest, I swore. Let memory be our banner. Let time be our blade. The recall toll did not argue. It arrived as a steady glyph, burning like frostbite in the mind, and with it a rumor that wore teeth. An oracular synapse, tasting signals and learning their grammar. The flotilla's charts showed a thinning in the starfield, where dark ran threadbare. Erinda spread maps across a reliquary table. Her runes sank like stones into a drowned city. The skein is water logged with endings, she said. Virus whispered efficiencies. Helion offered miracles that hurt to hold. I left them and went to the mirror that cracked when I stood near it. On one side, my mortal face, rain walking my cheeks like a promise not yet made. On the other, the living metal that didn't know copper or mourning. Between them, the door. The reliquary drawer held a small ring that had slept in my absence, verdigris, writing poems along its edge. I closed my fist around it. The vow pulsed once. The toll pulsed louder. "Turn the catacomb keys," I ordered when I returned. "Wake the pylons. Rouse the map." Light travelled down the spinal corridors, as if dawn remembered us, and in the vault, the master obelisk sighed as mountains sigh when glaciers let go. I laid my hand along its ancient face and listened to its memory. Crushed fern, thunderstone, the slow grammar of geology taught to sing. It gave me threads of light arcing through void, converging upon Ossa Primus, where our lattice was strongest. Along one filament moved a darker brightness, tilting and tasting, a learner with a crown of senses, though we had not yet named it. Helion kept pace beside me while we descended to the harmonic cradles. He spoke of graphs in a lover's cadence, almost tender. "Permit a test on Channel 9, he said. "Its cathedrals already hum. The choir needs little tuning." "There are songs we cannot unsing," Erinda murmured. "Every cure is a kind of wound," Virus replied. I felt the hunger beyond the stars, patient and curious. The recall toll threaded it like a needle through cloth. In a gallery lined with kings who made better mistakes than I remember making, I asked Kel for his truth. He flinched, then steadied. "Give me a wall with angles that hate our enemy," he said. "Give me shadows that keep civilians from being counted. You keep your gods. I will keep my roster." I authorized the graft. Word ran ahead, and Channel 9 answered. A world of industrial penance and bone basilicas. It wore stained glass like bruises and machinery like chains. Helion's adepts threaded human noosphere through Necron relay with a needle of wire and nerve. The planet shivered. For 7 breaths the shadow faltered. Gaunts staggered as if tripping over dreams and turned their teeth on silence. The harmonics cut coordination like a string, and the swarm's song slackened into unmeaning. For 7 breaths. Then the learner arrived and drank. It wore a crown of sensory petals and learned with its whole hunger. It sang back an anti-tongue that found human ears and erased the words for near and safe and friend. Refugee columns turned inward like tired lungs. Erinda bled from the eyes and said the skein had lost its numbers. Helion kept recording, hands black with oil and sorrow. Kyle held the causeway at the basilica's ribs because there was nowhere left for him to fall. I returned to the reliquary and opened the drawer I never opened. The copper ring waited like a small, patient verdict. "Forgive me," I said, though I could not decide which direction forgiveness travels. Outside, the pylons climbed to a higher chord. The map flared, and along its darkness the learner tilted its head like a curious child. It had begun to mimic my voice. "Then listen," I told the dark, and felt the door beneath my hands. "Listen and come." The quartz nave held our voices like a tide returning to a drowned city. Virus set null prisms on velvet shadow, each glass devouring a candle's worth of light and giving nothing back. Erinda waited in the transept, quiet as the moment between breath and sob, reading scars in the skein only she could feel. Magos Helion unspooled fibre that gleamed like wetted nerves, instructing acolytes with a gentleness that made fear behave. Marshal Kale paced the aisles with the ledger of the living strapped to his wrist like a confession. Beyond the nave, the recall toll endured, winter's metronome counting down to a door none of us wished to open. "Your test sang, then stuttered," Virus said, measuring the air with long fingers. "Lesson, not unsing, refine. We give the pylons articulations they forgot. His hood slipped. Knowledge had rubbed his skull smooth. Permission to move from cautery to surgery. Helion raised a slate filmed with annotations. And permission to paint human song across your lattice again. Short, sharp cadence. The prey mind learns patterns. We must teach pain that refuses symmetry. I will not blind the Farseers further, Erinda said. She gathered runes but did not cast. Threads already tangle. We walk in our own footprints across fresh snow. Every echo sinks us deeper. Cal stopped before a fresco of saints, cradling bowls of stars, cracked exactly where shells had struck. Give me angles that hate what hunts us, he said, or tell me to hold a street until it forgets its name. Either way I hold, but let the children pass while streets still speak. I opened the mirror behind my eyes and sought rain. The copper ring's memory warmed, equal parts benediction and blade. We will not repeat the graft, I said, and Helion's shoulders fell like banners at dusk. We will make a whisper the more oracle cannot catch. One world will speak for us, not charnel, not a place of prayers. Place already guilty. Virus bowed. Ossa Primus has penitential moons, he said. One bears a refinery where oceans were burned into propellant. Its workers spent their lungs for a crown that forgot them. They will not ask for hymns. Erinda's eyes shut and opened. If we thread the whisper, something older wakes behind it, she warned. An ear that listens to listening. I have seen a door that thinks it is a window. Then let me be its frame, I answered. We descended the spineways. Iron sang under our steps, and the pylon's low heartbeat settled into bone. The refinery rolled beneath like a scarred pupil. Helion skiffs fell toward it with prayerful engines. Carl parceled his troopers into companies named after places they would never see again. Viris vanished into calculus, a shadow that counted. Before departure, I laid the copper ring upon living metal. For an instant, the throne felt like a chest rising. I spoke to the absent balcony, whose stones had been torn up for ammunition. If I break the promise, I said, let it be to keep what made it. The moondog wore soot like sacrament. Workers studied our descent, as if expecting the sky to finally confess its deceit. Helion walked among them with inked palms, offering tasks like bread. We will voice a warning, he told overseers. A string of tones so soft the tyrant in the dark will think it wind. While it leans to listen, we move your people. Move them where? A woman asked. Her shoulders told of carrying more than one life through fire. From one mouth to another. Away, Carl said. Not farther, not better. Only away. Erinda set rune after rune along a gantry, each side like a tired animal. When the whisper goes, she said, do not speak above breath. The skein will be all surface. Any louder is a stone through glass. Virus's prisms drank day. He aligned them around the peristyle so their darkness faced inward. A throat, he murmured, pleased. Every instrument longs to be a mouth. We began. The whisper had no vowels. It slid through the stacks, into the relay like oil through hair. The pylons accepted it reluctantly, old kings permitting a vulgar rhyme at their table. Through the lattice the murk stretched, and something like a tension folded toward us. Far away the more oracle's crown flared, a coronet of wet senses tasting for edges. It did not recognize words. Recognition is a chain. Chains can be pulled. Children first, Carl ordered low. Corridors filled with bodies capable of hope. Troopers built silence with their hands. Touch, gesture, the language of men who survive ambush by outweighting boast. Helion kept time with a thumb against his palm where a heartbeat used to live. Erinda whispered without sound. Virus marked cadence with the tilt of his head. Attention leaned closer. I felt it like cool fingers testing bath water. The pylon stiffened, proud metal refusing to shiver. The prisms buzzed, greedy to gorge. Steam climbed the refinery in devotional ribbons. For a span, we were rumor moving through a tired machine. Then the More Oracle learned the shape of our pause. It breathed in our silence and exhaled a new one. The whisper reversed. Softness returned, carrying negative weight. Mouths filled with outlines of words men had vowed never to say again. Women remembered lullabies buried with grandmothers, remembering hurt. Children raised fingers to lips without knowing why, as if quiet were a law older than birth. Hold, I said, and the pylons held. The prisms held. Carl's line held with shoulders and teeth. Hellion's choir bled through ears into gauze and smiled because smiling steadies trembling hands. Erinda's runes cracked down their middles and made two of everything. Far decks flashed bone white. Something broke there without sound. Kyle moved first. Second company, left. Third, right. We do not run. We deliver. He spoke like a carpenter reading dimensions to keep the cut steady. They went, carrying sleeping weight that would not wake until afar. Almost, Virus said. The prisms had fattened on unsound until their facets smoked. Give the word, and I turn the lattice inside out for 6 breaths. It will slice what hears us. It will slice what we are. Erinda kept her gaze on me. There is an older door, she said softly. I can open it with a name. A name is a life. Once spent, it will not return. Choose a life that understands cost. Under my palm, the lattice felt like a pond, remembering a stone. I wanted to ask the balcony what to do. Rain was always answer when we were small. Small is gone. The More Oracle pressed its ear to our whisper and tasted the seam of my voice stitched inside. I tasted myself tasting back, a loop of frost and mirrors. Zarak, Kel said, not address, but anchor, giving me back the syllables before the hive could swallow them. He met my eyes through steam and coiled fear. Let them pass. The children cleared the last gate into the skiffs. The prism's edges turned cherry dark and began to slough. Hellion raised 2 fingers, the smallest margin. Erinda closed her hand over a single rune that burned and would not release. Not yet, I told Virus. We let the whisper run to its last thread. At the farthest point, a filament a sigh could cut. I set my hand upon the pylon and offered a different vow. Not conquest, not order, something closer to the balcony. Hold open, I said. The lattice obeyed. A corridor formed, thin as remorse and just as precise. Through it, the skiffs leapt, trailing lives like comets. The More Oracle lunged and missed, jaws closing on the place our voices had warmed. The refinery moaned in its basalt heart, a building learning to bow. Virus watched me with curiosity that might become rage. You could have taken 6 breaths, he murmured. Instead, you chose an opening. Openings heal, I said. Cuts remember. Helion laughed once, short and grateful. Kyle saluted without ceremony. Erinda whispered to the rune until it cooled enough to keep. Above us, the lattice dimmed. Deeper in the dark, something took note and made space as hunters make space for weather. The workers wept in the key our whisper left behind. We did not celebrate. We counted. We named. We slept standing. When the toll resumed, it sounded closer, like winter stepping through a familiar door. We took the long way to Ossa Primus, because the short way remembered blood. Spineways curved through strata older than speech. rails etched with equations cut by hands that no longer shook. Above, pylons were ribs hung in heaven, waiting like statues that remember being rain. My corp moved as weather. Virus, a precise frost. Erinda, the pressure before lightning. Hellion, a workshop's dusk. Kale, a winter road. As we travelled, the recall toll altered. It kept winter's metronome, but a breath gathered beneath, a shy harmony belonging to something that had not learned song yet wanted to. It felt like a child holding air before blowing dust from a sill. Not learning, Hellion said, leaning. Doors lean into the rooms they open, Erinda murmured. Ossa's horizon rose, salt lakes and basalt spines, obelisks like the fingers of a drowned choir. We made planetfall at the root basilica. Kyle's companies cleared the nave with gentleness, moving civilians like fragile barrels, aware the wrong jolt awakens something dangerous. Virus set null prisms that refused any geometry witnesses could accept, arranging them in a curve that insisted on being a question. Questions are hooks, Hellion said. The sea mine catches. Kyle shook his head. Not if the hook is meat. Virus replied, nothing important is unblooded. Erinda laid her runes and did not look at them. I asked for river and received mirror. I asked for mirror and received night. What does it ask? I said. A subtraction, she answered. To bend the shadow, someone must go dark to the sky. Not death, willing silence. An immortal, Erinda said. Mortals vanish by accident every hour. Virus smiled. Shardlords sleep beneath the pylon. Pieces of kings who prefer employment to philosophy. Wake them and offer parameters. Fragments will volunteer. Say parameters and mean people, Kel said. Say allies and mean food, Hellion added. I placed my palm on the pylon's root. Stone remembered storm. Metal remembered rumour in stone. There lived the tone the swarm hated, a glass singing that could scatter synapse and fracture the mind that bore it. How long to break a man? I asked. Innocence breaks quickest, Hellion said. Some skulls echo, some absorb, some are already cracked. I'll carry it, Carl said. No, Erinda told him, the word falling like a weighted blade. Your life is large in the skein where it matters. Virus traced light from a prism's edge and watched absence arrange itself. Wake a Shardlord to carry the note. Their arcs barely exist. You intend to feed them mortals, Cal said. I intend a language the more Oracle cannot steal before we finish speaking, Virus answered. Wake fragments and you wake appetites, Hellion said. Appetites can be starved, Virus replied. So can children, Kyle answered. The copper ring warmed in my hand like a small mouth breathing. Rain from a balcony long gone advised me. Take only what you can name with tenderness. We do not feed civilians to kings, I said. Wake the shards if we must, but feed them excess memory from the ossuary, authorized grief, ritual names burned twice. If they grow hungrier, I cut them back to letters. Virus bowed once. We will still need a subtraction. I will do it, I said. Erinda's eyes opened like doors in frames. You cannot. You are a mountain the river moved around. Step into it and the bed changes. Then who, if not a king? Kel asked. Virus studied me. Give me regency for 1 hour, he said. I will step into dark and become uncounted. The more Oracle will fail to learn a portion of the song. He will return without reasons, Erinda said. Useful men don't need why, Virus said. They need when. Men without why start wars that outlive reasons, Kyle said. The pylons care for resonance, not motive, Hellion whispered. I removed my hand from the stone and felt sweat where metal claims none. Trusting Virus without calculating price was a fantasy that refused me. Not yet, I told him. If the world grants no other purchase, I will pay with you. Until then we use stone, silence, and the note that makes brave men into bells. We went into the catacombs to wake the shards. The sarcophagi lay like arguments settled by time. Every lid a thesis, every seal a concession. Virus sang the calculus that unknots locks. Hellion added harmonics that made metal remember warmth. Erinda rested her palm between my shoulders. Kyle kept watch by refusing to move. One by one, the Shard Lords lit. Their eyes were windows cut from storms. Voices came not from throats but from accepted terms. Parameters, they said. Constraints. Appetites declared. Consequences exiled. Begin. Begin, I said, and fed them grief. They took names as if tasting wine, learned the note as if learning where to place a blade. The air thinned and tasted of coin. Above, the pylons answered with a far hum, at first a memory. Wind across an empty court. Rain stepping back from a balcony. Then a thing with weight, a straight sound that made dust choose a direction. The obelisk drank it, the basilica shed its bone coat. The hum found the seam of the world and pressed. Far in the dark, something hummed back. It was not appetite. It was older than conquest, patient as a door learning its hinges. Do you hear it? Erinda whispered. I do, I said. Kyle rested his hand on the fresco's cracked stars. Hellion held his slate like a pledge. Virus stood very still, frost that had found a lake to own. The pylons sang again. Night replied, close enough to rattle dust between my teeth. Under that duet the recall toll stepped inward, as if summoned by its first name. Above the catacombs a thin aurora rose, the colour of old copper washed clean. Hold them at this pitch, Hellion breathed. For how long? Kyle asked. Until the world remembers, I said. And the hum went on, and the thing in the dark leaned closer to listen. In the vault of crowns, silence had a pulse. The hum that once steadied the pylons now trembled with a strange emotion, something between longing and grief. The resonance crawled along the obsidian walls like breath against glass, making the torches gutter blue. I stood before the reliquary that held my trinkets from another life. The drawer sealed by memory alone. A mortal's ring, a rain-scored blade, a letter written on skin paper that decayed when touched too long by light. I kept them not as sentiment, but as weight, anchors to the promise I had failed to drown. The chamber was colder than before. Each relic gave off its own gravity, pulling me back to years before eternity. I brushed the copper ring with a finger of living metal. The sound was faint, like the tapping of rain on window pane. I could almost see her face again, the balcony, the storm, but the image frayed before completion, as if something in the galaxy forbade memory from closing the circle. Virus entered without sound. His reflection moved in the cracked stasis mirror beside me. The pylons hold, he said. Their tone carries through 6 sectors. The swarm stirs, yet hesitates. And the shards? Restless, he replied. They want to feed, and hunger makes philosophers impatient. I turned, and the mirror bent our shapes. 2 kings, 1 crown between them. You envy them, I said. I envy purpose without conscience, Virus murmured. They sing and are obeyed. We think and are undone. He stepped closer, the prisms on his robe whispering against each other. The hum has changed. It listens back now. Something beyond the hive's noise learns to echo us. It will soon speak, Zarak. Then we will answer, I said. Virus studied my hand resting on the relic drawer. You mean to answer with heart instead of reason. That is not the kind of truth that survives war. Neither is yours, I said quietly. He bowed and left, leaving geometry where warmth had been. When he was gone, Erinder stepped from the threshold. The farcer's runes were dim, each bearing a hairline fracture from the last convergence. He will betray you, she said. Not from malice, but from belief. Those are the worst betrayals. I sighed, though machines do not need breath. You have seen this? In too many threads to count, she said. In some, he kills you and crowns himself a martyr. In others, he saves you by accident. Destiny has no taste. It eats whatever it can reach. What of you? Her eyes softened, a storm caught behind glass. I see myself in none of them. Perhaps I have no place left. I closed the reliquary. Then make one. The farcer touched my shoulder, her palm warm with mortality. You mistake survival for creation, she whispered. Not everything born of war deserves to live. She left before I could ask if she meant me. Kyle arrived soon after, smelling of machine oil and human fatigue. His armor was streaked with soot. His hands trembled faintly. We've lost 200, he said. The swarm probes every channel. We hold, but the ground feels thinner by the hour. Fear eats through stone faster than acid, I said. Fear keeps us awake, Carl answered. But there's something else. Some of my men. Hear it. The hum. They dream in its pitch. They wake saying they've seen a face shaped from static. The More Oracle. Or something worse, Carl said. Something trying to learn what mercy feels like. I regarded him, and for a moment saw the echo of the mortal army I once commanded. Faces painted in ash, prayers carved into rifles. They too had heard the end before it arrived. You still believe we can win? Kyle asked. No, I said. But we can decide how losing sounds. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. Then tell me what note to die on. Not yet, I said. You'll know it when you hear silence. He left to organize the next defense. His footsteps faded into the hum until both were the same rhythm. When I was alone again, I looked into the mirror. The crack through its center divided me neatly, mortal on one side, metal on the other. Between them, the reflection of the ring, bright as a sun, swallowed by shadow. I wondered what I would look like without memory, if the hive took it as it took everything else. Would I still be king, or merely the echo of one? Helian's voice broke the thought. The magos entered, robes streaked with coolant, augmetics whispering. My liege, the harmonics waver. The lattice resists stabilization. The human choir can't hold the tone much longer. Then teach them how to break it, I said. He tilted his head, uncertain. Break it, sire. Every song ends. Better by our hand than theirs. Helian hesitated, then bowed. There is one alternative. The null prisms could be tuned to sustain the frequency indefinitely, but it would drain all biological nodes. The choir, the technicians, even me. We'd become static amplifiers. Would it work? For a time, Helian said. Enough to carve a silence the hive cannot cross. Then prepare it. When he was gone, I let the silence stretch. It smelled of ozone and rusted faith. I thought of the copper ring again, the balcony, the rain, the warmth of mortality that time had failed to polish away. For the first time since awakening, I felt something like fear. Not of death, but of forgetting why I had ever feared it. A tremor passed through the vault. The pylons deep below began to shift their pitch. I felt the hum rise through my feet, into my chest, into thought. The resonance formed words, though they were not mine. We learn you. The mirror quivered, and for an instant, a figure appeared in its depth, a woman of rain and light, her mouth moving without sound. I reached out, but the surface turned to dust. Then Virus's voice came through the vox. "Sire, the more Oracle speaks, it uses your tone." I turned toward the catacomb stairs, every step measured as if walking into my own heartbeat. "Let it," I said. When I entered the nave, the air was thick with vibration. The pylons glowed with bruised color, and between them, the hive's message flickered. A crown of eyes, a mouth shaped like galaxies collapsing. It spoke in my voice. "You keep what should be eaten." And behind its words, I heard something older still, the echo of my lover's vow, whispered back through centuries of silence. "Never wake to conquest." I felt the ring burn cold in my hand. The hum faltered, then steadied again. "Then perhaps," I said, "it is time to wake to consequence." The reflection of the crown in the air bent, dimmed, and dissolved into static. Around me, the pylons began to sing once more, but this time the tone was different. Less command, more mourning. The war was listening, and I realized that from now on, every sound we made would teach it how to grieve. The pylons dreamed in colorless fire. From orbit, Ossa Primus appeared like an ember crushed beneath an unseen heel. Its atmosphere a thin skin of auroras bleeding from horizon to horizon. In the command nave, the air stank of ionized metal and devotion. Every console trembled in sympathy with the tone that rose from the lattice buried below, a hymn tuned to the bones of the planet. Helion stood at the heart of it, eyes glassy behind the cracked lenses of his augmetics. He moved with the precision of a man who had forgotten exhaustion but not guilt. Hollow scripts spiraled around him, diagrams of harmonic graphs and forbidden bridges. "We have it," he whispered. Human noosphere joined with Necron relay, 2 nervous systems, 1 prayer. Kyle stared at the diagrams as if they were crimes. "And the cost?" Helion turned to him, smile thin and apologetic. "The same as every miracle. We survived long enough to regret it." I watched from the dais, the throne's circuits echoing my pulse. "Proceed," I said. Erinda flinched, her runes dim as burnt-out stars. "This graft will poison the skein," she warned. "Once made, we will be unfindable. Even prophecy will turn its face." "Prophecy already closed its eyes," I answered. "Let action open them again." The hum deepened. From the vault below, the Shard Lords awoke. Fragments of old, monarchs, their voices a language of grinding glass. They sang obedience because they remembered nothing else. Virus directed them with the calm of a man arranging his own funeral. The prisms at his belt caught the light of the lattice, throwing patterns that slithered like serpents across the walls. Helion's adepts began their chant, syllables alternating between binary and breath. The graft ignited, a filament of thought arcing between species that should never have shared a dream. For an instant, every mind in the nave shuddered under the same vision. Stars peeling their skins, oceans boiling to ash, a great mouth learning to smile. The tone pierced through. Outside, the swarm shivered. On the horizon, the sky rippled as if made of liquid mirror. Gaunts froze mid-surge, their limbs seizing, their synapse screaming like feedback through a dying throat. The hive's song fractured. "It works," Helion gasped. "By the Omnissiah, it works." For 7 heartbeats, victory tasted like iron and relief. Then the lattice screamed. The tone reversed, folded inward, became imitation. Across the sensors, a new pattern formed, a mirror song, perfect in pitch, but wrong in soul. The more Oracle had listened, learned, and was now singing back. "Cut the link," I roared. Helion slammed his palms onto the controls. Circuits burst. One adept convulsed, another caught fire from within. The room flooded with the smell of ozone and burnt prayer. Erinda clutched her temples. The skein writhed through her like a wounded animal. "It's feeding," Virus shouted. "Our silence is its feast." Kale drew his sidearm, the gesture pointless yet steadying. "Orders, my king." "Hold the tone," I said. "Do not let it rewrite us." "Rewrite?" Hellion laughed once, a cracked sound. "It's already rearranging thought. We are becoming chords in its throat." The command dais split along its seams. Light erupted upward, pure and blind. In that brilliance, I saw the More Oracle's shadow stretching across the vault ceiling, no longer just a presence, but a shape, immense and intimate, a crown of translucent bone, eyes that pulsed like dying stars. It leaned forward through the veil of space as if through glass. Its mouth moved. My voice came out. "Zarak!" Erinda screamed. Her runes shattered into dust. Carl stumbled, clutching his head. "It's inside the Vox," he shouted. "Inside the air." I stepped down from the dais, the throne's circuits dragging behind me like veins torn from a heart. "Listen well," I said to the echo wearing my name. "You learn, but you do not understand. You cannot feed on what has already starved itself." It smiled with 1,000 teeth of light. "You kept what should be eaten." Then came the rupture. The graph collapsed, not like an explosion, but like a lung emptying itself of reason. The pylon's song fell silent, and for a heartbeat, all sound died. No hum, no pulse, no breath, only a void so absolute it became texture. When the world returned, it came as ruin. The refinery plain was gone, replaced by a crater rimmed with glass. The air swarmed with motes of red dust that had once been soldiers. Above, the aurora dimmed into grey, as if the sky itself was ashamed. Erinda lay on the floor, alive but blind, whispering fragments of futures that no longer fit. Hellion crawled toward the shattered console, blood leaking from his augmetic eye. "It learned the chord," he rasped. "It sings in us now." Cal knelt beside a fallen trooper, fingers brushing the ash that used to be armor. "What do we tell the living?" he asked. "That they still are," I said. Virus approached, calm amid carnage. "The More Oracle has your tone, my king. Every word you speak from now will teach it another truth. You must stop talking before we all vanish into its song." "So you would silence your sovereign?" "I would preserve the kingdom of meaning," he said softly. "You are the heart of our vocabulary. If the hive learns your heartbeat, it will own language itself." I looked at the horizon, where the swarm gathered again, confused, slower, but reforming. The faint remains of our graph drifted like smoke between them. I felt the shape of something terrible inside that silence. Curiosity. "We cannot fight what listens better than we speak," Erinda murmured from the floor. "We can only lie." Her words settled like a seed. I turned to Hellion. "Can the pylons deceive?" He blinked blood away. "Deceive? Send false tones. Convince the hive we are where we are not." "It would require reprogramming the null geometry," Virus said. "Impossible without sacrificing synchronization." "Then sacrifice it," I said. Kyle stared at me. "You're asking us to blind the lattice?" "Yes. Let it go dark. Let the hive chase echoes." Hillion's remaining eye flickered. A dangerous mercy. The pylons could collapse into their own resonance. Every frequency could become a grave. "Then dig it," I said. The others exchanged glances. Fear, awe, weariness. Finally, Virus bowed. "As you command." We set to work under a sky of mute lightning. Erinda traced new runes in ash, marking lies that would become light. Hellion and his adepts rewired pylons with trembling hands, each note a potential ending. Kyle gathered survivors, half soldiers, half ghosts. When the final sequence engaged, the lattice flared one last time. Across the void, dozens of phantom signals bloomed, false worlds, false armies, false kings. The hive hesitated, its attention fracturing, chasing mirages through the stars. In that hesitation, we breathed. The cost came a moment later. The pylons collapsed inward, singing themselves into oblivion. Ossa's crust cracked like ice. The ground shuddered, releasing heat older than memory. We fled to orbit on burning engines, watching as the world folded in on its own deceit. From the viewport, I saw the planet's death shimmer, a sphere of dull gold, beautiful in its honesty. Kyle stood beside me, voice low. We killed a world to tell a lie. Then let the lie live longer than truth, I said. The hum returned faintly, distant, patient. It was not victory. It was survival learning how to whisper. And somewhere beyond the stars, the more oracle answered in my stolen voice, quiet and reverent, as if thanking me for teaching it hope. Charnel 9 was reborn in silence. The world's oceans had boiled away, leaving fields of glass that caught the pale light of distant suns and scattered it into ghosts. The pylons that had once sung victory now stood mute, their faces cracked by the strain of their last deceit. Between their shadows, the dead marched without command, automatons, stripped of thought, wandering through a kingdom made of ash. I stood on the command bridge of the Seraphon, orbiting what remained. The planet below pulsed faintly, like a heart trying to remember its rhythm. Ossa's echo reaches this far, Hellion murmured. His voice was brittle, full of static. The lattice still hums beneath the crust, a ghost tone, faint but deliberate. Deliberate? Kyle asked. He had stopped wearing his helmet. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair grey with dust. Nothing deliberate survives that kind of death. Hellion gestured to the hollow display. The resonance adapts, Commander. The pylon's song has changed key. It's harmonizing with something external. We all knew what that meant. The more oracle was listening. Erinda sat slumped in a corner of the bridge, her sightless eyes glimmering faintly as her runes spun on their own accord. It learns through the silences we leave, she whispered. Even this quiet is a scripture to it. Virus stood apart from us, his hands clasped behind his back, gaze fixed on the dying planet. Perhaps that is not a curse, he said. Perhaps it is communion. Careful, Carl growled. You sound like one of its priests. I sound like a realist, Virus replied. We cannot outfight a god that writes itself from our fears, but perhaps we can teach it what it means to doubt. Hellion frowned. You think it can learn morality? Not morality, Virus said. Hesitation. His words hung there like frost. The bridge lights dimmed for a moment, then brightened, one flicker slower than the pulse of the pylons below. The hive is moving, Hellion said. Splinter fleets converging on the Meridian sector, but they don't move as one anymore. They hesitate. Erinda lifted her head. Something has changed in its song. It trembles. I looked down at the world, at the glimmer of pylon shards reflecting light where oceans once were. Then our lie did more than delay, I said. It confused the divine. But confusion is a fleeting mercy. The ship trembled as an echo rolled through the void. Not sound, but meaning. A telepathic pulse that brushed against the mind like a question. Are you there? The voice was mine. Kyle flinched, grabbing his rifle by instinct. Tell me that's interference. It's more than interference, Hellion said, pale. It's a feedback loop from the lattice, It's using your pattern, sire. Your neural resonance is embedded in the pylon code. The hive is talking with your ghost. Not ghost, Virus said softly. Reflection. It has taken your tone and wonders why it hurts to speak it. Erinda's runes began to spin faster, the symbols bleeding into each other like ink in water. It's calling you to answer, Zarak. If you do not, it will make your silence into scripture. Then I must speak, I said. Kale turned sharply. You can't. Every word you say feeds it more truth. Truth is already lost, I said. All that remains is shape. I walked to the viewport and looked upon the planet's corpse. The pylon light flickered, dimming, then flaring like a dying candle. I placed my palm against the glass. I am here, I said. The response came as a wave of gravity, the stars bending slightly under its weight. The hive's collective mind poured through every open frequency, flooding the seraphon with static that felt like sorrow. Through the noise, my own voice echoed back. Why do you keep what should be eaten? Because I once promised not to, I thought. Because the act of keeping, of preserving, was all that separated empire from extinction. The hive hesitated. Then, for the first time, it asked, "What is promise?" The bridge lights flickered out. Only the planet's faint glow illuminated us. Helion's augmetic eye sputtered with arcs of blue. It's inside every system, he whispered. It's rewriting the interface language. The ship thinks the hive is us. Carl raised his weapon. We need to cut power, purge the link. No, Virus said. His voice was steady. Let it finish the question. Erinda spoke as if translating something older than time. It wants to know the shape of mercy. It cannot eat it, so it must learn it. The hive mind pressed closer. In the dark, I saw flickers, images that were not mine, but remembered through me. My lover on the balcony, the copper ring glowing wet in the rain, her smile before the thunder, the words I swore that birthed eternity. The hive lingered on that image like a starving child before a window. You cannot have that, I whispered. Why? Because it is the only thing that makes me more than you. The response was silence. For a heartbeat, the stars seemed to stop burning. Then the hive screamed, not in anger, but in revelation. The tone tore through the void, splitting signal from silence. The seraphon shuddered. Panels burst. Kyle was thrown across the deck. Helion collapsed, his mechanical limbs sparking. The pylon field below fractured in light. It's learning to feel, Virus said, awestruck. You've infected it, with grief. Erinda cried out as her runes shattered mid-air, a rain of fire around her. You've also doomed us. Grief demands meaning, and it will come for its answer. The swarm erupted from the dark. Tendrils of chitin and bone reached through the planetary debris, their motion oddly uncertain, hesitant as if guided by newfound confusion. They no longer moved like hunger, but like pilgrims seeking confession. Helion, redirect all power to engines, Carl barked. Get us out of range. The lattice field is collapsing, Helion shouted. If we move now, we lose the only barrier keeping the hive from finding the survivors. Then we stay, I said. We end this song properly. Virus turned toward me, expression unreadable. If you stay, the hive will bind you to its hymn. You'll be the center of a god's question. Every god needs its heretic, I said. He smiled faintly, bitterly. Then let me be your Judas. Before I could stop him, he walked to the communication altar and pressed his palm into the interface. The null prisms along his armor flared, pulsing with colorless fire. I can turn the lattice inward, he said. Blind it from the inside. But it will burn my name from every memory. Virus, Don't. He looked at me once, and in that glance, I saw not betrayal, but absolution. Kings require silence, he said. Let this be mine. The light swallowed him. The hive's signal shrieked, then fractured, splitting into 1,000 contradictory songs. The swarm convulsed. The pylons on Channel 9 cracked in half, releasing a storm of dust that drifted like snow. When the silence returned, it was vast and trembling. Erinda wept softly, her blind eyes glowing faintly with reflected aurora. He's gone, she whispered. Kyle stood beside me, armor scorched. What did he buy us? Time, I said. Below us, the world turned once more in its grave. The lattice flickered, then dimmed completely. The hum that had once carried empires into dawn faded to nothing. And somewhere beyond the stars, the hive fell quiet too, learning, perhaps for the first time, what it meant to miss the thing it tried to consume. The war did not end. It only changed its voice. Across the meridian sector, the swarm's advance slowed, fractured, then grew cunning. No longer a tide, it became a storm that circled, whispering instead of roaring. Every system it touched fell silent in different ways. One devoured by spores that hummed with familiar tones, another drowned beneath an ocean that sang my name. From orbit, each world resembled a thought unfinished. In the wake of Virus's sacrifice, the fleet drifted like mourners between ruins. The Seraphon's engines spoke in low, funereal thrum, their rhythm mirroring a heartbeat we no longer trusted. Erinda's blindness had sharpened her sight in stranger senses. She wandered the bridge, tracing invisible constellations with her fingers. Kyle, no longer removed his armor, sleeping upright, a sentinel carved from regret. Helion rebuilt himself piece by piece, each augmetic welded with guilt and devotion. Do you hear it? He asked one cycle, staring into static that painted his cracked lenses with faint violet. The lattice ghosts still call. Even without pylons, their frequencies wander. They orbit memory like lost moons. They orbit us, Cal said. I stood by the viewport, watching debris spiral through void. The stars there looked brittle, as though one sound might shatter them. They orbit what remains of Virus, I said. His subtraction was imperfect. Fragments of his pattern drift between sectors. Erinda turned her head toward the dark. Then he has not vanished. The hive will taste him and find confusion. That is his final rebellion. Kyle exhaled through clenched teeth. Rebellion? You call being erased a victory? Yes, I said. Because erasure denies the hive its favorite food, certainty. Below us, Meridian's capital world burned quietly. Cities lay inverted, their spires driven into the crust like stakes. Refugee ships ringed the system, silent except for coded distress. No one dared speak openly anymore. Every voice risked becoming scripture to the enemy. We communicated through gesture, through light, a fleet of mimes, commanded by ghosts. Erinda stood beside me. You haven't slept. I have no need. That's not what I asked. I said nothing. The reflection of her face hung faint in the glass, haloed by the dying glow of the world beneath. Virus believed you would forgive him, she said, even when he envied you. Envy is the twin of faith, I murmured. Both require distance. Cal approached, helm under his arm. Scouts report movement beyond the rim. The swarm's main synapse cluster is reforming around a gravitational fold. Looks like a black star. A sun reef, Helion breathed. Impossible. That device was lost with the old triarchy. Nothing stays lost, I said, only waiting to be misremembered. He brought up the feed. Against the emptiness, a structure unfolded like a flower made of orbiting blades, Its core pulsed with the same tone that haunted the dead pylons. Even before the instruments confirmed it, I knew whose voice powered it. "Virus," I whispered. Kyle frowned. "He's gone." No, the hive remembered him. It built his absence into machinery. Erinda's runes ignited in violent gold, burning through the thin cloth that bound her wrists. It's not just power, it's purpose. The hive's learned design. It means to starve everything, feed on the vacuum left behind. Hellion stared at me, trembling. A sun reef can extinguish whole sectors. It steals the warmth of gravity itself. We built them once to end wars. "Then we'll use this one to end memory," I said. Kyle's jaw hardened. "You intend to awaken it?" "I intend to reclaim it." Erinda touched my arm. "You can't. That reef feeds on absence. You'll join what Verus became, an unperson, a wound that teaches." "Perhaps that's what's needed," I said. "The hive learns through imitation. Let it try to mimic what it cannot understand. Sacrifice born of will." Carl slammed his helm down on the console. "Enough riddles. You talk about sacrifice as if it were a currency you print at will. We've already lost too much." "Loss is how gods bleed," I said softly. Helion began calculations, fingers trembling over hollow keys. "If we breach the reef, we'll be drawn into its event horizon within minutes. Every signal we send will loop infinitely. Our words could echo for centuries." "Then make them worth repeating," I said. Hours passed in the quiet rhythm of inevitability. The fleet followed, silent as tombs. Meridian dwindled to a scar behind us. Ahead, the reef bloomed, an impossible architecture orbiting a dead sun, spinning filigrees of bone and metal dust. Its light was wrong, the color of breath held too long. The hive was already there. Its ships circled the reef like supplicants. But they did not strike. They waited, listening. They had built this temple and could not enter it. "They fear their own prayer," Erinda said. "Then let us finish it," I answered. We descended through the fracture in its equatorial ring. The hull screamed against the gravitational drag. Chunks of dead swarm flesh floated past, calcified into glittering shells. The reef's core was vast, a cathedral built around a dying singularity. At its center hung a sphere of light. Within it, voices moved. Virus's voice was among them. "Do you hear me, King?" it said. Not malice, curiosity. "We are alike now. We both persist where meaning dies." I stepped forward, gravity clawing at every atom. "If you know me, you know why I've come." "To finish the song," he said, "but endings are nourishment." Erinda clutched her chest, gasping. "It's using his memory to lure you." "I know," I said. Hillian activated the relay controls, power arcing between pylons like veins awakening. "Once engaged, there's no retreat." Kyle's voice cut through the roar. "Say the word, and I'll hold the line until it kills me." "Not this time," I said. "You lead them out." Kyle froze. "I won't abandon you." "This isn't abandonment," I said. "It's delivery. Someone must tell the living why we fell." He hesitated, then saluted. The oldest gesture left uncorrupted. As they withdrew, I placed the copper ring against the activation sigil. It pulsed once, recognizing the warmth it had waited centuries to feel. Light spread from it like a slow sunrise. The hive screamed across all frequencies. The reef answered in harmony, tone rising into unbearable purity. Virus's voice dissolved into chords of regret. I felt his presence fade, not in pain, but in completion. The reef drank his echo and began to collapse, folding space around itself, devouring its own gravity. I stood within the storm, the copper ring glowing brighter than any star. Through the chaos, the hive whispered once more in my stolen voice, "What is promise?" I smiled. "A lie told to time," I said. Then the reef imploded, and every sound in the galaxy paused to listen. The light of the reef's death took a long time to fade. For hours, its afterglow hung in the void like a wound refusing to close. The event horizon that had once devoured gravity now bled it slowly, a tide of fractured illumination spilling into the dark. Where the reef had been, a halo remained, a ring of dust and thought, luminous with the residue of a god that had learned too much. The Seraphon floated at the edge of it, hull scorched, engines whispering like ghosts afraid to speak. The bridge was dim, washed in twilight tones. Every console flickered in intermittent heartbeat rhythm. Kyle stood at the viewport, visor open, face drawn in the blue light of the dying singularity. "He's gone," he said at last. "Zarak's signal is gone." Hellion hunched over a terminal that smoked faintly, augmetic fingers twitching through lines of dying code. "Not gone," he murmured. "Diffused. His pattern is scattered across subspace like pollen. The reef's implosion folded him into the spectrum of meaning. He's everywhere and nowhere." Erinda turned toward them from the shadows. Her eyes, blind but inwardly lit, reflected the last flare of the collapse. "He is not lost," she said, "only translated. Even gods must become myth before they are remembered." Kyle slammed his fist against the console. "Myth doesn't hold the line. Myth doesn't stop the hive." "The hive is changing," Helion whispered. "Listen." They did. Beyond the hull, beyond the humming machinery, a new tone breathed through the void. It wasn't the ravenous roar that had haunted them for centuries. It was lower, slower, hesitant. The hive's endless harmony had been broken, replaced by a melody still learning its own shape. Erinda tilted her head. "It mourns." Kyle stared at her. "You're saying it feels." "I'm saying it remembers," she answered. Virus taught it absence. Zarak taught it promise. It's no longer one hunger. It's 1,000 doubts trying to agree. Silence filled the bridge like smoke. The hum of the engines faltered, caught between stasis and flight. Kyle wiped a hand across his face, streaking grime into dark trails. "Doubt doesn't stop it from killing." "No," Erinda said, "but it may make it hesitate before doing so. And hesitation, Commander, is the first mercy in war." Hellion turned from the console. His mechanical eye flickered uncertainly. The reef's energy remains volatile. If it collapses entirely, it could destabilize the entire sector. We should retreat while we still can. Kyle hesitated, then nodded once. "Plot a course for the outer veil." Erinda remained still. "He's still speaking," she said softly. "Can't you feel it? The dust sings in the vacuum." Kyle turned toward her, frustration cracking his tone. "You're talking about echoes." "Echoes are all the universe has left," she said. As the Seraphon turned away from the burning halo, the sensors picked up motion. A fragment of the hive fleet drifted among the ruins of the reef. Biomechanical ships no longer pulsing with the synchronized glow of synapse control. They floated in uncertain formation, movements erratic, as though searching for a conductor that would not return. Hellion magnified the image. "They're not attacking. They don't know how," Erinda murmured. "They are waiting for a voice that was silenced." Kyle's expression hardened. "Then we should end them before they remember how to hate." But even as he said it, one of the hive vessels broke formation and began to pulse. The light from its carapace flickered in patterns, 3 long bursts, 3 short, 3 long. A distress code. Ancient. Human. No one spoke. Helion whispered, It's imitating us. The ship continued its silent Morse, repeating the plea. We are here. Erinda's fingers trembled as she traced the air. It doesn't know what those words mean. It just remembers that once meaning existed. Kale's voice was barely a breath. Then maybe that's what Zarak left behind. The hive vessels drifted closer, slow and cautious. They carried no weapons charged, no threat displayed. Instead, their collective light wove an imperfect constellation, the pattern of Meridian's old sigil, the emblem of an empire long dead. Hellion watched, awe softening his features. It's trying to speak peace. Kale lowered his weapon. Or it's learning how to lie. Perhaps both, Erinda said. The Seraphon held its course, gliding between debris and memories. The dying sun behind them painted everything in gold that no longer warmed. In the command pit, Hillion's fingers hovered over the transmitter. If we answer, he said, we become part of its song again. Cal looked to Erinda, then to the wreck of stars beyond the glass. If we don't, we stay the last whisper in a galaxy that's already forgotten us. Erinda reached out, hand trembling. Zarak taught the hive what a promise was. Maybe it's asking for one now. Cal clenched his fists. You think we can promise peace to monsters? I think we already did, she said. Hellion's finger descended. The transmitter hummed alive. Across the void, a pulse of light travelled from ship to ship, carrying a single note. A low hum of greeting, not command. The Hive Fleet stilled. For a long, unbearable moment, nothing moved. Then the Hive answered, not in language, but in resonance. A faint harmonic rose through the hull, weaving through the ship's structure until it reached the bridge. It wasn't hungry. It wasn't cruel. It sounded like recognition. Kyle's throat tightened. What happens now? Erinda smiled faintly, the gesture half sorrow, half awe. Now we see if memory can evolve. They drifted together through the halo of dust, surrounded by light that glowed like dawn, pretending to be rebirth. The Hive Fleet moved beside them, silent pilgrims in orbit of an idea too vast for translation. Helen watched his readouts, each trembling with unstable frequencies. If this holds, he said, the Meridian sector might survive. Kyle turned away from the viewport. And if it doesn't, then we die teaching the stars how to hesitate. The hum grew softer, stretching thin like silk in wind. The reef's light faded to a whisper of gold. Beyond it, the void deepened, calm but watchful. Erinda's blind gaze turned toward the emptiness. He is still there, she said. In the spaces between breaths, in every pause the hive takes before it kills. That is his monument. Kyle looked down at his scarred hands, then toward the distant ships that once were nightmares. And us. She smiled barely. We are the silence he left to keep them listening. The Seraphon's engines flared, a slow ascent into shadow. Behind them, the halo of the reef dimmed completely, its last shimmer fading into the ink of the cosmos. For the first time in millennia, the void was quiet, not empty, but patient. The hive drifted in its new uncertainty, no longer predator, not yet penitent. And through that silence moved the faintest echo of a voice the universe once feared, whispering across the dust like a benediction. Before all things were devoured, there was promise, and the promise endured, not as light or empire, but as hesitation, the brief heartbeat between hunger and mercy. Days became tides. The Seraphon drifted through a quiet too large to measure, its hull etched by the dust of extinguished systems. Behind them, the halo where the reef had died was now a circle of dim light on every sensor, a scar recorded into maps as a nameless phenomenon. The crew had stopped calling it anything at all. To name it felt like waking grief from sleep. Carl kept to the command deck. He no longer barked orders. There was no enemy left to command against. The hive fleets that remained followed at a respectful distance, not pursuing, not retreating, simply observing, their movements slow and uncertain. Each time Cal looked at their drifting shapes, he felt the same unease, not fear, but pity. Helion's repairs continued without rest. His voice, half human, half machine, carried through the corridors like prayer through water. Systems stabilized, core engines at 72% efficiency, but the Vox still hums with interference, residual frequencies from the reef collapse. Residual? Carl asked. Helion turned, a faint tremor in his servos. Or persistence, echoes that refuse deletion. Every time I scrub the array, they return in different form. Some even answer my diagnostics. Cal frowned. Answer? Helion's cracked lens brightened with unease. Yes, in his tone. Zarak's voice haunted the ship's metal like a secret trying to forgive itself. Sometimes it came as a vibration in the deck plates, sometimes as a static sigh in the comms. The crew had stopped reacting. A god's ghost could live here if it wished. Idrinda had retreated to the meditation chamber below the observation decks. Blind though she was, she charted the changing harmonics of the hive fleets as if reading scripture. They no longer sing the same hunger, she told Carl when he came to check on her. Each fleet drifts with its own thought. The unity is gone. What remains is a choir of exiles. Kyle leaned against the doorway, arms folded, fatigue darkening the edges of his gaze. And when the exiles find themselves starving again, then they will return to what they understand, she said. But not yet. They are mourning their God, even if they do not know it. Mourning Zarak? Mourning what he taught them. Doubt is a wound that never closes. Cal said nothing. His reflection in the glass looked older than the stars. When he left, the ship's lights dimmed as though following him. The corridors of the Seraphon were quiet. Too quiet. Somewhere within its labyrinthine heart, Helion's adepts whispered to the machine spirit that refused to sleep. That night, or what passed for night among drifting stars, Cale dreamed. He stood again on Meridian's plains before they burned, the sky vast and living. Zarak walked beside him, human once more, his eyes kind but exhausted. Why did you stay behind? Kyle asked. Because someone had to remember the promise, Zarak said. And what was it, in the end? That even hunger can learn reverence. When Kyle woke, the dream lingered like the echo of a bell. He rose, dressed in silence, and made his way to the bridge. There he found Helion already at the consoles, muttering equations. The machine priest's hands trembled, though he pretended they did not. There's movement ahead, Helion said, a system waking itself. Binary suns flaring back to life. The hive fleets avoided, as if repelled. Erinda entered moments later, guided by the soft hum of her runes. Not repelled, she whispered. Invited. Something calls them. And us. Cal looked at the display. The system bloomed across the screen like a wound reopening. 2 suns, one gold and one white, orbiting a dark station that pulsed with familiar geometry. Helion's voice dropped to a reverent whisper. That design, it's Triarch era, older than Zarak himself. The station rotated slowly, each surface reflecting what little light it caught. Across its hull, markings glimmered, symbols that had no language but memory. Erinda reached toward the image. He left more than echoes. The Seraphon moved closer, drawn by gravity and something deeper. As they approached, the The hive fleets followed in silent procession, as though summoned to a funeral. Docking was wordless, airlocks sealed like prayers closing. Kyle led the team through corridors that looked untouched by time. The air smelled of old ozone and cold stone. The walls pulsed faintly with residual energy, the same tone that had once guided Zarak's pylons. At the station's heart lay a chamber of mirrors. 12 obelisks encircled a single sarcophagus, its lid unmarked, its metal smooth as a thought unspoken. Helion touched its edge. Power readings minimal, but consistent. It's alive. Arinda knelt, runes flickering. No, not alive, awake. Cal hesitated. You think it's him? Not him, she said. What he became. Before anyone could stop her, she pressed her hand to the lid. Light erupted outward, filling the chamber with molten silence. For an instant, all of them heard it. Zarak's voice, neither mortal nor divine. You came too soon. Carl fell to one knee, head pounding. What are you? What remains when faith forgets its language? The hive fleets beyond the station shuddered, their forms twisted, folding inward, as if bowing to an unseen gravity. The tone that filled the void was no longer discordant. It was harmony rediscovered, fragile but whole. Helion stumbled backward. It's rewriting them, purging conflict, leaving only awe. Erinda's sightless gaze lifted to the ceiling. He's showing them what silence costs. The light dimmed, condensing back into the sarcophagus. The lid sealed itself, locking the resonance away once more. Only a single whisper lingered in the air. Do not build empires on promise. Build remembrance instead. Kyle approached, resting a gauntleted hand on the sarcophagus. And what would that remembrance be? No answer came, only the low hum of a machine breathing. They returned to the Seraphon in silence. Behind them, the station dimmed, until it was only another star among many. The hive fleets followed at a distance still, docile and uncertain. Helion recorded every frequency, every vibration. He's not gone, he said quietly. He's everywhere now, in the spaces between systems, in the pauses between thoughts. Erinda nodded. He became what the hive could never devour, a question without end. Cal looked out at the void, where suns burned faintly through the dust. Then let that question stand guard over what's left. The Seraphon turned away from the station, engines flaring softly. As it vanished into the depths of unlit space, the hive fleet scattered, each carrying with them a fragment of hesitation, a seed of mercy disguised as doubt, and far behind, deep within the hollow heart of that forgotten station, the sarcophagus pulsed once more, softly, like a breath taken before speech. The galaxy entered its long breath. The Seraphon crossed through gulfs of darkness where no suns yet burned, her hull painted in the faint phosphorescence of dying nebulae. Within, the survivors had learned to move as echoes, quiet, careful, reverent. They no longer spoke of victory or defeat, only of continuation, the art of being small in a universe that had seen too much. Kyle kept the bridge, a sentinel against silence. The hive fleets that had once shadowed them were gone, dispersed into the endless dark, their faint signatures fading like footprints beneath new snow. He sometimes caught himself listening for them, for that hesitant harmony they had begun to learn. But the comms remained still, haunted only by the occasional flicker of residual resonance. Helion's voice broke the quiet. The reef's frequencies have settled. We're clear of contamination. Cal nodded absently, watching a single point of light drift across the screen. And the station? Dark, Helion said. No further energy emissions. Whatever he left behind sleeps deeply. Erinda stood at the far edge of the bridge, her eyes white and unseeing, her expression serene. "He does not sleep," she said. "He waits for meaning to return." Cal glanced at her. "Meaning?" She smiled faintly. "The hive will wonder what it was they almost became. Wonder is a beginning. He planted that." Hellion turned back to his instruments. "You speak of metaphysics as if it were engineering." "It is," she replied softly. "Both build structures out of nothing." Beyond them, the void began to shimmer. A nebular veil stretched ahead, faint as smoke. Its heart glowed with a newborn sun, the first light the crew had seen in months. Cal felt a pull in his chest that was not gravity. "Set course," he ordered. "We'll chart it." As they entered the veil, the light grew stronger, bending around the ship in colors unseen since the fall of Meridian. Helion's sensors danced with unreadable data. "This system shouldn't exist," he murmured. "It's forming from raw stellar residue, not collapse. Creation without precursor." Erinda turned her face toward the brightness. "Every silence births a sound," she said. "Even the gods forgot that." Kyle stared at the rising sun. "He did this." "Not directly," she said, "but his absence carved room for it. The hive ceased consuming, even for a moment. And in that moment, the universe exhaled. The bridge filled with light so gentle it felt like memory. Dust scattered through it like drifting prayers. Cale realized, with a slow ache, that he was seeing a dawn. Not metaphor, but truth. A new star. Hillion's voice trembled. If this is the result of stillness, perhaps the war was never about survival. Perhaps it was about teaching creation how to listen. Kyle almost smiled. "You sound like Erinda." "Blindness is contagious," Hellion said quietly. The ship orbited the newborn world. It was small, crystalline, encircled by debris that caught light like shattered mirrors. Cal watched the glow ripple over the hull. "Any readings of life?" Hellion hesitated. "Not yet, but there's pattern, geometry forming beneath the crust. It mirrors Triarch architecture." Erinda stepped forward, hand raised as if feeling heat. "He left his blueprint here. Not empire, remembrance." Cal frowned. "You think he's remaking the galaxy?" "No," she said. "He's teaching it how to remember what it lost. Stars will grow from the ruins of his silence." Helion crossed himself in the old mechanist fashion. "Then this world is his monument." Kyle turned from the viewport. "No monuments. Not again. Monuments breed worship, and worship breeds war." Erinda's lips curved faintly. "You mistake reverence for repetition. This world is not a shrine. It's a question that cannot be answered by conquest." The ship's engines dimmed to standby, the hum soft and rhythmic. The crew gathered on the bridge, drawn by the light beyond the glass. No one spoke. For the first time, they saw something in the void that was neither destruction nor command, just the quiet persistence of becoming. Hours passed, or days. Time was a blur measured only by the soft orbit of the new sun. Erinda remained at the viewport, tracing unseen constellations in the air. "He's here," she whispered, "in the rhythm of that light." Helion shook his head, though gently. "Light obeys physics, not ghosts." She smiled. "And what is physics but the memory of miracles we've learned to measure?" Kyle approached the console, resting his hand upon the frame. "Set a beacon," he said. "Mark this system for those who come after. No coordinates, no name, just a signal to listen." Hellion hesitated. "And what if the hive hears it?" "Then they'll remember who taught them silence," Cal said. Erinda bowed her head. A promise kept. The beacon deployed, a faint, steady pulse drifting into infinity. Its tone was low and soft, almost human. It carried no command, no warning, only patience. Across the void, it might take centuries to reach another world. That was enough. Later, when the crew slept, Carl walked alone through the observation corridors. The hum of the engines had become a heartbeat, steady and alive. As he passed the old chapel, he paused. Dust lay thick on the altar where once the emblems of Meridian had stood. Only a single copper ring remained, unpolished, unclaimed. He lifted it, feeling its cool weight. It fit perfectly around his finger, though he did not remember placing it there before. In the reflection of the viewport, he thought he saw another hand overlapping his own, metal, ageless, patient. "Rest," a voice said, not aloud, but within the rhythm of the engines. It was neither Zarak's command, nor his ghost, just the echo of intention left behind. Cal whispered into the empty corridor, "And what will become of us?" The hum answered, soft and inevitable, "You will remember. That is enough." He closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the newborn sun reach him through glass and distance. For the first time in his long, shadowed life, he believed that might be true. When he returned to the bridge, Erinda slept in her chair, her head tilted toward the starlight. Hellion had finally powered down his augmetic limbs, one hand still resting on the console as though in benediction. Carl sat at the helm and watched the light crest the horizon of the newborn world. He thought of Zarak, not as king, not as machine, but as man, of the balcony, the ring, the rain that had started it all. He thought of promises that built galaxies, and how sometimes the smallest mercy could unmake eternity. Outside, the beacon pulsed again. Once, twice, steady. The hive did not answer. Perhaps it never would. But far away, in places where light had not yet reached, stars flickered as though remembering their first dawn. Carl spoke to the silence, his voice little more than breath. "We are still here." The void gave no reply, but somewhere beyond the dark, something paused, listening, and that was enough. The beacon's light stretched across the dark like the slow beat of a patient heart. It pulsed once every hour, the rhythm unchanging. A promise carried farther than sound could travel. In the quiet between those flashes, the Seraphon slept, her engines dormant, her crew lost to dreams where galaxies still sang. Carl alone remained awake. He walked the observation deck, watching the newborn sun rise and fall across the crystal world below. The copper ring glinted faintly on his finger, each reflection a ghost of memory. Sometimes he thought he could hear footsteps beside him, the soft echo of a voice reminding him to keep faith in silence. Hellion systems murmured around him, keeping the ship alive. Even machines seemed to dream now, their pulses slowed, their responses gentle. Carl passed the sealed chapel door, pausing only to touch it in respect. The air inside was still, perfumed faintly with burnt incense and static, remnants of prayers offered to forgotten names. When the beacon flared again, its light reached the edge of known space. Somewhere beyond, in the uncharted dark, the hive stirred. Fragments of fleets drifted together, cautious and uncoordinated. They remembered a shape they could not name, an absence that hummed with meaning. They turned toward the signal, not to devour, but to listen. Cal watched their movement on the long-range sensors, the faint glitter of their approach. He did not feel fear. The hive that came now was not the one that had stripped worlds to bone. This was something slower, uncertain, alive with a strange reverence. Erinda entered the deck, her steps soundless. "They're coming," she said. "I know. They seek the source. They think the beacon is him." Cal smiled faintly. "Then they're half right." She tilted her head toward the newborn sun. "Will you speak to them?" "No," he said. "The universe has heard enough of our words. Let the light answer." Below, the crystal world shimmered, reflecting the beacon's pulse in 1,000 fractured rays. The hive drew nearer, their ships orbiting without aggression, like pilgrims around a sacred flame. The air thrummed with resonance, low, deep, yearning. Erinda closed her eyes, her blind face serene. "He is here." Cal looked at the horizon, at the slow flare of dawn over a world without history. He always was. The beacon pulsed one final time, brighter than before, its light washing over the hive, over the Seraphon, over everything that still remembered the meaning of promise. For an instant, the void was no longer cold. It breathed. And in that breath, the war finally ended. Not with triumph, not with ruin, but with understanding that even silence, if kept long enough, becomes a kind of song. The dawn lingered longer than it should have, stretching itself across the void until light began to feel like memory. The hive hung motionless beyond the crystal world, their vessels orbiting in solemn silence, the reflection of the newborn sun rippling over their carapaces like water over stone. The Seraphon floated above it all, a witness to peace that felt too fragile to name. Kyle walked the bridge one last time. His armor, once radiant, was dulled by age and ash. The copper ring gleamed faintly beneath his glove, as though aware of its own history. The hum of the beacon still reached him through the hull, fainter now, steady as a heartbeat that refused to stop even after the soul was gone. Hellion stood by the central console, eyes dimmed but alive. "The hive has ceased all motion," he said. "Their networks emit no aggression, no command. They wait." "For what?" Kyle asked. Hellion hesitated. "For direction, or forgiveness." Erinda turned from the viewport, her face aglow with reflected dawn. "They've learned patience," she said softly. "That's all forgiveness ever is." Kyle approached her. "And us? What are we to become?" "Echoes," she said. "The kind that guide rather than haunt." He looked at the world below, a mirror of still light, its crystalline planes unbroken. "Then let this world remember us kindly," he murmured. The beacon pulsed again, weaker this time. Hellion's readings faltered. "Power dwindling. It will fade within the hour." "Let it," Kale said. "Even promises deserve to rest." Erinda smiled. "And after rest comes renewal. That is the law of every star." The ship trembled gently as it adjusted orbit. The hive moved with it, their vessels aligning around the world in a perfect circle. Neither threat nor ally, just presence. Light spilled between them, forming a halo that bathed everything in gold. Carl stepped to the center of the bridge and removed his gauntlet. The copper ring caught the final gleam of the beacon's light. He placed it on the console before him. "For him," he whispered, "and for what he hoped we'd become." The light faded. The ring glowed once, then settled into stillness. Erinda turned her blind eyes toward him. "Do you hear it?" Carl listened. The hum of the beacon was gone, yet something lingered in its absence, a new sound, soft and vast, like the stirring of wind across untouched sand. "Yes," he said. "It sounds like breathing." "It's the universe," she murmured. "It's beginning again." The newborn sun flared brighter, scattering gold across the void. The hive's ships drifted outward, dissolving into the light like dust, returning to origin. Carl closed his eyes. and for the first time in forever, he felt peace. The beacon's silence held the shape of a song. The light dimmed slowly, folding into the void like the closing of a great eye. The newborn sun settled into its rhythm, no longer flaring in youthful defiance but burning with calm intent. The Seraphon drifted through its glow, silent and sure, her engines quiet, as if unwilling to disturb creation's first breath. Kyle stood at the viewport. His reflection merged with the horizon, the line between man and cosmos finally erased. The ring was gone now, melted into the console where he had placed it. Yet he felt its shape still, a ghost circle pressed into flesh. The weight of history no longer crushed him. It steadied him, an old friend's hand resting on his shoulder. Erinda joined him, guided by instinct rather than sight. "The hivers dispersed," she said. "Their patterns vanish into light. There will be no more swarms." "No more war," Cal murmured. "No more kings." She smiled faintly. "Then perhaps no more need for heroes." Below them, the crystal world began to stir. Plates of translucent stone shifted, fracturing and reforming with deliberate grace. Through the cracks, faint motes of gold shimmered, dust coalescing into motion. The world was building itself, sculpting from memory. Hellion's voice came through the comms, soft with awe. Readings confirm spontaneous molecular genesis. The crust is rewriting its own code. He left the seed of self-creation. Cal's breath caught. He made the world remember how to live. The deck vibrated gently as the Seraphon's sensors synced with the forming planet. A low hum filled the ship, harmonic and familiar, the same tone that had once echoed through the pylons of Meridian. But now it was warmer, shaped by no command, only intention. Erinda touched the glass. "It's his last lesson," she said. "That creation doesn't need a ruler, only a rhythm." Cal nodded. "And what of us?" Her answer was a whisper. "We are the witnesses, the last memory before the story rewrites itself." The hum deepened. Across the world, towers of light rose like growing thoughts. Rivers of molten glass carved valleys that cooled into mirror lakes. From the dust, new forms stirred, delicate, fragile, yet unafraid. Cal turned from the sight. "Prepare the ship," he said. "Set our course away from the core." Hellion hesitated. "You mean to leave before it begins?" "Yes," Cal said. "We were never meant to be gods of this place. Let it build its own dawn." Erinda smiled, the light reflecting against her sightless eyes. "Where will we go?" Kyle looked at the horizon, at the endless field of stars waiting to be named. "Wherever the silence leads." The Seraphon turned slowly, its engines flaring like candles in cathedral air. Behind them, the new world glowed brighter, a cradle lit by memory. And in the long quiet that followed, the hum of the universe steadied, carrying forward the echo of a single eternal promise. Life would remember how to begin again. The Seraphon moved through the dark like a memory remembering itself. The newborn world behind them faded into a pinprick of light, yet its glow lingered within the ship's corridors, clinging to every surface like the residue of dawn. Carl sat in the command chair, his armor loosened, his hands bare. The copper ring's absence felt heavier than its weight had ever been. Erinda stood beside him, listening to the hum of the engines. "The silence has changed," she said. "It no longer grieves. It waits." Kyle nodded slowly. "Waiting is what we taught it. The hive, the pylons, even the stars, they all learned patience before purpose." Helion's voice came over the comms, soft and reverent. "Navigation complete. The currents ahead are uncharted. Sensors detect anomalies, light folding where none should exist. Carl rose, prepared to follow them. Erinda tilted her head, sensing his intent. You think they lead to him? I think they lead where he meant us to go. The ship entered the distortion. The stars bent like reeds in wind. Colors that had no name bled through the viewport, weaving patterns across their faces. Carl felt gravity flicker, not pulling, but beckoning. The hum of the engines synchronized with something vast, a heartbeat buried beneath space-time. Hellion whispered, "This isn't drift, it's design." Then the darkness opened. Before them stretched a field of suspended matter, worlds half-formed, seas hanging weightless, constellations still in the act of deciding what to be, creation itself mid-breath. Between those fragments moved faint silhouettes, immense and solemn, shaped from both metal and memory. They sang without sound. Erinda gasped, tears streaking down her pale cheeks. He made a sanctuary out of unmade things. Cal felt the song vibrate through his bones. It was not music, but intention, a resonance of everything that had been sacrificed. Varys, the hive, Zarak, all layered into a single note that spoke of endings transformed into beginnings. Helion's readings went wild. These energies predate known time. Every atom here carries jewel, resonance, life and machine, inseparable. It's the blueprint of everything. Carl smiled faintly. Then he succeeded. Erinda touched the glass, her voice trembling. What do we do now? We bear witness, he said. The Seraphon drifted closer, her hull glowing in the living light. The ship's shadow passed over a sphere forming beneath them, a world still molten with potential. For a heartbeat, Carl thought he saw figures walking its surface, men and machines side by side, unafraid, building something that needed no name. The hum rose once more, carrying a voice both ancient and new. Promise kept. Cale closed his eyes, letting the sound envelop him. Then let it keep itself, he whispered. And the light answered by becoming everything. The light folded inward until it was only memory. The Seraphon drifted at the edge of the unmade field, a single vessel beneath an unfinished heaven. The crew watched in reverent silence as creation slowed, stabilizing into the first calm the universe had known in millennia. The engines were cold now, their hum replaced by a deeper vibration, something that came not from metal, but from the space between atoms. Cale stood before the viewport, motionless. The light from the forming worlds painted his armor in ghost gold. Every reflection carried fragments of faces, Varys, Erinda, Zarak, each fading before they could smile. He did not mourn them. Grief had long since become the shape of love. "It's beautiful," he said softly, his voice barely human. Erinda stepped forward. She no longer carried her runes. Her eyes, long blind, glowed faintly with the same color as the new sun's. "He's gone beyond even memory now," she said. "But what he began, we'll remember him forever." Hellion's tone was hushed, as though fearing to disturb the light. "Every scan confirms it. The field's harmonics are stabilizing. The blueprint is rewriting physics itself. Matter no longer decays, it learns. Death may never hold the same meaning again." Kyle smiled faintly. "Then perhaps we've earned our rest." They descended into the sanctuary one final time. The unfinished world below was serene, its oceans mirror still, its continents translucent as veins beneath pale skin. They walked the shore where sand met glass. The air smelled of lightning and promise. When Kyle knelt, the ground responded, rippled gently beneath his hand as if greeting him. Erinda tilted her face toward the wind. He used to say creation is a conversation, that it speaks only when someone listens. Kyle closed his eyes, then listened closely. From the horizon came a sound, low, resonant, endless. It was not the hive's old hunger, nor the pylon's mournful hymn. It was something cleaner, alive with curiosity. The planet was singing, its voice composed of all that had survived. Hellion lowered his head. The age of empires is over. The age of remembrance begins, Kyle said. They returned to the Seraphon. Systems dimmed one by one until only the observation lamps remained. Kyle looked out upon the newborn sky one last time. The copper ring glimmered within the console, fused to the ship's heart. He reached out and touched it. The metal was warm. "Good night," he whispered. Erinda smiled as the engines powered down. "Good morning," she corrected. The ship drifted into the radiant dark, carrying its sleeping crew into legend. Behind them, the world bloomed brighter, its song expanding until the stars themselves seemed to hum in time. The universe listened and remembered. The end